Bret. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. Welcome everyone to RDU on Stage. If you're watching us on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitch, I'm happy to see you. I'm Lauren from RDU on Stage in Raleigh, North Carolina, and I'm hanging out with Bret Shuford from in your sheltered in place in Texas, right? So it's a little earlier your time.
It is, it is.
And our mutual friend Andrea, she just posted, "You're everywhere, Bret." And we'll talk about your collaboration with Coloring Broadway in a minute. I'm so excited to talk about your career, and I have so many questions for you. Normally, I have like a half a page of questions for people on these live chats. For you, there's like a page and a half. So we're going to jump in and get started. Um, I One thing I love so much about your career is so much of our audience is based outside of New York. And what I love about your story is you grew up outside of New York in Texas, in Orange, Texas. So talk to me about the importance of regional and community theater in your life early in your career and even on North Carolina Theater Stage, because I read somewhere on one of your bios that you were at NCT. And how did those experiences help hone your skills and get you on your path to Broadway?
Well, I mean, community theater was everything for me. I first off, thank you for having me. I should say that. But you know, for me, I think the lessons I learned through doing community theater is that people say you learn by doing, and I think that learning how to play an audience and manage and collaborate backstage and in rehearsals. And the risk is so low in community theater, as compared to Broadway, right? Where the money is not, you're not going to lose $14 million if the show doesn't succeed. But the skills that I learned doing community theater, uh, you know, were foundational and fundamental for me. There wasn't really a lot of professional theater near me. I was 2 hours away from Houston, which was probably the closest major city. And so community theater was it. And I immersed myself, and I say this to young people all the time, just perform every opportunity that you can. You are never above anything, you are never below anything. Just go for it, because you're going to learn so much by doing. And for me, so that's community theater. I feel like, I mean, and community, listen, it's been 20 years, 20 something years since I've done community theater, but so I don't know what it's like now. It seems like it's up leveled a lot from what I see online. I feel like I see some community theater productions that look, on par with
Pretty
major.
fantastic.
Yeah, I don't know, which is shocking, but I found for myself, that was foundational. It gave me so much opportunity to do what I love and to learn. And then through that, I mean, there's a few people in New York that I did community theater with in Texas that I'm still in touch with, and we have that connection, we have that experience together from when we were kids. But I also think that regional theater for me as an artist, excuse me, well, I think Broadway is such a wonderful job and a wonderful community, and uh, it doesn't have the same. When I do regional theater, the experience is so much more freeing and artistic, because again, kind of back to this idea that the risk is lower. Most of these regional theaters have subscribers, so they have a budget that they've already set for the season. They know, how much they have, so they can experiment, or they can take a little bit of a risk and go darker or go more interesting, or do like a, sort of dissected version of a show. And their audience, base is already there. They don't have to try to like guess the way Broadway does, have to kind of presume what they think will succeed. So I always found regional theater to be one of the more artistically satisfying experiences.
I think too, where regional theaters and community theaters can take some risks is in casting, diverse casting, and we've seen that for sure on our regional stages here at places like North Carolina Theater. So, what show did you do at NCT? Now I'm
Uh,
dying to know.
I did a chorus line there in 2000. It was a long time ago. Mitzi Hamilton directed it. It was like 2003. And it was starring some amazing people like Josh Prince, who ended up choreographing Shrek and is a major choreographer now. And who else was there? Was like a whole bunch of amazing people in it. Um, Kendra Cassabaum was our Val, who was like a Glinda and was in Come From Away, and so that was like a really really fun experience. So I loved that production of Chorus Line.
They do amazing shows over there. Eric Woodall, who was with Tara
Yeah,
Rubin Casting, is now the producing artistic director
right.
at NC Theater now. And, it's really interesting to me because one thing I've interviewed Eric many times, and in one of our very first interviews, he said that the reason he casts through the lens of equity, diversity, and inclusion is because of what he learned working with Disney. You are a self proclaimed Disney nerd, but aside from that, you worked with Disney theatricals on Beauty and the Beast and Little Mermaid. Talk to me about being part of that Disney family. And did you find that they were very equity diverse? They were very inclusive in their casting and their shows?
Yeah, I mean, listen, excuse me. Gosh, I think we all have learned that even when we think we've been diverse, inclusive, and diverse, we could do better. So, I want to just acknowledge that at the time, it seemed great. I think that it's improved and they've learned, and we're all learning. So I do think that, I remember doing Little Mermaid was a very diverse cast, and there were Tom Schumacher, having been in several Broadway shows and worked with different types of producers. What he created at Disney is very unique. It has a very family feel of being a major corporation. And I am so grateful that I got to be a part of that family. He has continued to be somebody that I reach out to and communicate with. And I don't know a lot of people who are that open, who are at the
Mm.
level that he's at. So yeah, I think that Disney. In fact, Eric was casting Little Mermaid when I was auditioning for that. So I do think that there is something about what Disney did that really set the tone for, and I think that's why Tom is now the head of the Broadway League at this point, because I think that he really had created such a great community within Disney.
Mm.
Hmm.
I love that. And I love that Eric cast you in Little Mermaid. I didn't know that connection. So
Yeah.
I think through the course of this interview, you and I are going to find out that we have a lot in common. One thing that we have in common is soap operas. Kids, once upon a time, there used to be soap operas on every channel on television. And the CBS ones were my favorite. I interned at As the World Turns, so I have a soft spot in my heart for As the World Turns. Um, did soap operas come first for you, or did Broadway come first?
No, theater was first. Always wanted theater. It wasn't until I booked, I think I was doing Beauty and the Beast, that I think that I even did. I think I did All My Children, As the World Turns. I did it As the World Turns a few times, just like small little, things. Uh, But it's sad, So I mean, I guess versions of soap operas are still around, but they're not what they were. And and I loved, I loved going on those sets and being there. It was fun. It was very theatrical, very fast and furious. Yeah.
And I do want to say, working that summer on As the World Turns, and I was a production intern, so I got to watch the show being filmed every day. And those are the hardest working actors in show business, the ones who worked for the serials, the soap operas, because man, they were learning new storylines, new scripts every single day, multiple times a week. It's incredible to watch. So did you find that you were able to kind of hone your skills? If you had been already on Broadway, you probably had a lot of those skills already in place, but did you learn anything working in that fast-paced environment?
Uh, I mean, I definitely learned watching because I didn't do it enough and I didn't have big enough roles on those soap sets to like really challenge myself. But watching those, like you said, watching those actors, watching somebody be in a hospital bed and they're like, go, and she's like, just like the tears are coming down and she's dying, and there was no build up into it. There was no, she just had to go, and that was pretty impressive to me. uh the soap world it was an interesting sort of bridging that. I went into Beauty and the Beast when All My Children had an actor on it. Wow, I'm blanking on his name. It's terrible. It'll come to me. And he at the time they had cast him as Lumiere, and I got cast as Lumiere while he was playing the role, and so I was as an understudy for him to while he was playing the role. So I would have to go on for him on Wednesday matinees because he was shooting All My Children, and the soap opera fans are so diehard. And he was like young and kind of hot, but they would come to the stage door and they would say things like, "You were good. You were no Jacob." Oh God, Jacob. It's Jacob. Oh God, what is his name?
See,
It was
I
Jacob.
never
His
want
first name was Jacob.
Jacob.
The second name will come.
Okay,
They were
all
like,
my
"You,
children fans, type in Jacob. What's
Jacob
his
Young,
last name?
Jacob Young."
Okay.
That's it. I knew it would come to me. You were no Jacob Young, but you were good. They would say things like that. It's like, you've only seen him on TV. You've never seen him on stage. It was a very, very interesting little soap world.
The fandom for soaps, for shows like All My Children, As the World Turns, and Guiding Light was crazy because those shows were on for decades and decades and
Yeah.
decades. And there would be news breaks, where we interrupt this broadcast for breaking news. And fans would call into As the World Turns, like, why are you preempting my show for this news break? So the fans are diehard for sure. Um, I do want to ask you a personal question. What about your brother? My daughter was diagnosed with autism in fifth grade. She's 18 now. And I have a son who I guess would be classified as neurotypical. He has ADHD, but not some of the other uh, behavioral challenges that my daughter faced growing up, social challenges. You also have a brother who lives with a disability. So talk to me about how living in that environment. I'm so mindful of siblings who grow up with a sibling who lives with a disability. So talk to me about growing up in that environment and how that connects to your love of Disney. Because I read you said that it was through him that you learned the magic of fantasy and how that can lift people up. So talk to me about how your relationship with him informs your love of Disney and all things theatrical.
I love talking about my brother. He is a magical human, and he's on the spectrum. he's he's high functioning, so he's very communicative. But for me as a kid, one of the challenges we had was, there's four boys in my family, and he was the oldest. And the challenge for us was that the three of us, kind of became responsible for him fitting in, right? Like we
Mhm.
would be responsible for socializing him. And part of that was, not first off, let me just say 40 years ago, we didn't know what autism was, right? There
Yeah.
was no language for it. So we just knew that he had special needs. We knew, we called it different words that we don't use now because it's derogatory, but that's what they called it back then. And so we didn't have a name for it. There was no vocabulary in our family. So our duty was to make him feel normal, whatever that means, right? So
Mhm.
that created a lot of challenges, growing up, because like I was a gay, sensitive kid who loved musical theater in Southeast Texas. There ain't nothing normal about me, in that community. And so then, like, how do I fit in, and how do I help him fit in? And I think that there was something about doing theater that helped me escape those pressures because I could fit in on
Mhm.
stage. I could fit in to the world that was created. And I think Disney's storylines of, the underdog and the person who finds their own way of fitting in and their own place in the world, that's like a recurring theme in those Disney things. And I think that for my brother, I could he loved that. He lit up with those experiences too. So I think that always, I knew that if I could help him escape and help engage his imagination. And one of the gifts of quarantine life is that we're in Texas. I get to see him. I see him once a week. We're going to spend together Saturday. I haven't gotten to spend this much time with him as an adult ever.
Mhm.
So it's a beautiful gift, and it's reinvigorated my passion for wanting to help people see and know more about autism and Fragile X syndrome, which is the condition under which his autism, or he's on the spectrum. So, um, yeah, that's my story. My brother, he's pretty awesome.
Did you ever see, you probably have if you're a big Disney fan, there's a wonderful documentary and an accompanying book called Life Animated. If it's wonderful about how Disney movies opened up this child who grew into this adult, and just if you haven't watched it, watch it with a thing of tissues. Have you seen
My,
it?
my friend Jonathan Freeman is the voice of Jafar, and he wrote the whole, like, he worked on the documentary and helped. So yeah, I've seen it. And yeah, he's awesome.
Oh, it's a beautiful documentary.
Yeah.
Watch it and have a box of tissues. Um, so, made your Broadway debut in Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, which in one article about you said it's a Disney show, but it's actually not a Disney show, even though the score is the Sherman Brothers or Richard. Is it both of them that wrote the score for the movie?
Yeah, it's both of them.
Um, then you go to Disney and Beauty and the Beast and Little Mermaid. And while you're working on Little Mermaid, you meet your husband, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I read that you knew he was a keeper because he saw The Little Mermaid 9 times. Is that true?
It's true. It's all true.
Oh my goodness. God bless you, Stephen, for sitting through that show. That is not one of my favorite shows. Only because when I saw it with my daughter for the first time, after Ariel loses her voice, she like 5 seconds later, she has a big song number. And my daughter just looked at me and said, how can she sing if she doesn't have a voice? I was like, Oh man, I'm going to spend the next 2 hours trying to explain this.
Didn't
So,
didn't you see the light? Didn't you see the lights change? Like it's
I was like, oh man. Um, and he was in Billy Elliot. He was a ballet dancer. He was principal dancer. Then he went into Billy Elliot. So, how many times did you see Billy Elliot? Because you may have gotten the better end of the deal on this.
well, the problem was that he by the time Billy Elliot opened, I was in Mermaid, and so
So you
um,
guys were both working.
so we were both working. But what my show would come down earlier, so I could go second act. I would when my show would come down, I would they would be at intermission, and I would walk in and go watch from the balcony.
I love that. So what has pandemic life been like for the two of you? Have you learned anything new about each other during this period of self-isolation and quarantine?
It's a good question. I mean, I do think that we are really understanding each other's needs a little bit more because we're together so much that how do you like because usually like we get time apart and we're with other people, so we're much more social in our normal lives when we're in a not in a pandemic. And so now, really allowing ourselves to have space within our space and allowing ourselves to separate and go do other things without each other, just to go for a walk, I think is really good. I think that we both I think that we both have actually found, well, we know how much we love each other. Like that has not changed anything. Like it's like it's if anything, it's strengthened it. But I think we both have found like our our independence in the world a little bit more because we're no longer there's nothing like the thing for years, for 20 years, it's like I have a show to go to. I have a job or an audition or a thing that defines my identity. So whatever I do outside of that is just sort of an extra, right? But all the stuff that I did as an extra outside of performing, I do full time now. And it's like created this sort of independence in our lives where he's teaching ballet more often than he ever did, and I'm coaching a lot more than I ever did, and it's been a really interesting growth for both of us.
I love that. And you both host the Broadway Husbands podcast, and you both are in business together. You have Broadway Life Apparel. So, how is it being in business and living together and being together 24/7? If I were in business with my husband, we might kill each other.
Well, it there's good days and bad days. I let's be honest, like I am definitely the more A type person in the relationship. So I end up doing a lot more of the work, like the sort of, setting it up so that he can just show up and he's such a fun, bubbly person. So I set it up so that he can just show up and record the podcast and then everything else. We've built a team now, like we have somebody who helps us, so that helps a lot. If you ever want to do something with your spouse, get someone to help as almost like a moderator almost.
A mediator, yes. I love that. Um, oh my gosh. And I will say, if you all are you on stage followers, if you were reading our blog post earlier in the week about our top picks for the holidays, you're in Patty with Trust. Patty LaPone has been such a delight to watch this entire pandemic. So your in Patty with Trust baseball tee ended up on our list. So everyone go to Broadway Life Apparel so you can get, and if Patty's not your thing, they have Audra, they have Barbara, they have tons of shirts and
Thank
apparel.
you. Thanks.
You were working in Wicked when Broadway shut down. Talk to me about the day the lights shut off, because as I've spoken to other actors, a lot of them left thinking, oh, it'll be a week, it'll be 2 weeks, and then we'll be back and we'll be we'll be ready to go. And now it's been 9 months or something crazy. So talk to me about that night and kind of the where people are now that you know who are working in the industry, how emotionally.
I think we all saw it coming. I remember being in, backstage, and we would watch, there was a TV in the dressing room, and sometimes we would turn it on and just like look at the news just to see like, oh, this virus is really spreading, and they're closing down Italy and blah blah blah. And so we were all kind of seeing this encroaching thing coming. So it wasn't a huge surprise. I just don't know that you know, I honestly think that we've all been in shock. I honestly think we've all been in shock for this whole time. Me personally, I can speak for myself. Something about the election being over, it's like it let some of the air out of this shock balloon, and I feel like I'm actually kind of coming down to earth again. I think that for a lot of people, listen, we are theater people. We are resourceful. We will find a way to make it work. We know how to, like, if something goes wrong on stage, we adjust, right? We learn how to adjust, and I think what I've seen so many people do gracefully is really just adjust. Like, we're gonna adjust, and we're gonna take it one thing at a time, take it one step at a time, and it's been really cool to see people's resourcefulness come out in ways that probably wouldn't have come out if this hadn't happened.
Yes, and I know here people have spoken about um, how accessible a lot of these virtual streams make theater to people. And so here, at least, the feeling is that hopefully some of the virtual stuff will stick around a little bit. Although I know there's all sorts of hoops to jump through when it comes to licensing and that kind of thing. But that seems to be the overall sentiment locally, is that it's making theater accessible in a way that maybe it hasn't been before.
Yeah.
You mentioned you've got the Broadway life coach business. You are a coach, and what I think is different about your coaching is you are a certified life coach in addition to being a professional actor, performer. As you've worked with your clients through this pandemic, are there any common themes that you're hearing about things that are affecting them either mentally or emotionally, or things that are kind of getting them into their head a little bit?
I think that for a lot of people, the imposter syndrome comes in a lot because they're wanting to pivot. They're wanting to think about, and when I say pivot, it doesn't mean like 180 degrees. It means like, just like a 1 degree pivot. Like, maybe I should go over here. I've always had a hobby as a photographer. Maybe that's a creative outlet to make some money while we're in this downtime. And then they think, but who am I? I'm like, no one's going to take me seriously. So that adjustment for them to go into a new avenue and explore that without letting go of their dream, I think that's really a big part of that. Is like, if I become that, am I no longer an actor? And that letting go, like being able to know that their identity still exists even while the industry is down, is part of it. There's also the thing that comes up a lot is this, the further away, and this would happen anyway, but it's definitely more challenging now. The further away actors get from success, let's say you hadn't done a show in 6 months, there's a spiral of I'm failing, I'm not booking, I'm not successful. And so there's this constant reminder that like the success you had 6 months ago still counts. It didn't just disappear, right? You're still successful. Like everything you've built doesn't just disappear because there's a pandemic. So just helping them stay, okay, great. Yes, like that, I can acknowledge that. And then I can do the next thing that I want to do and know that I'm not somehow failing because I can't control a virus, you know?
And it's really interesting you mentioned the imposter syndrome, because I think that is one of the biggest things I hear from my actor performer friends, that they feel at one time or another in their careers, COVID or not, that they have that. So I appreciate that you mentioned that, because I think so often we think we're alone and we're not. We're just not.
It's true.
You wrote an article, and I think it was for Backstage. I don't remember who it was for, but you talked about the importance of routine for performers during this time. So, what should performers, either professional performers or even performers on our regional or local stages, what should they be doing during this time to keep their mental and physical health in check so that they're ready to get back on stage when things reopen?
Sure. I always say first things first, be gentle with yourself. There is no reason to put pressure on yourself because you didn't sing today or you didn't show up to dance class this week. And you don't need to beat yourself up about it, right? You also, we're going through a mourning process. We're going through a grieving process. And when you're mourning and when you're grieving something, you have to go through those stages. And that means creating space and allowing yourself to have feelings and allowing yourself to process. And so I my whole mission, I started the Secure Actor Project. And if anybody wants to join us in my free Facebook group, secureactorproject.com, when everything started, it was let's just focus on a minimum of three things a day. You do one thing that centers yourself, whether that's journaling or meditating or just breathing for 20 seconds. Like sometimes just consciously getting yourself in your body and centering yourself. Find one moment to do that. This is just a minimum, right? Find something to craft your career. Crafting your career could be marketing yourself, build it, could be working on something in your skills, but do something career based and then do something community based. So something where you're connecting with a power greater than yourself, right? Multiple people, getting on a Zoom call, connecting with someone within your community, calling someone, and just making sure if you can do a minimum of those three things a day. Some people want to do more, and that's totally up to you. But at a minimum, if you can balance those three things a day, I think we'll get through this pretty strong.
I love that. Um, there are a lot of Broadway performers now who are also offering coaching. What should someone look for in hiring a coach, a professional coach?
Well, it really depends on what you're looking for. So, I mean, in my opinion, for me, like I'm not going to be everyone's cup of tea. I'm very much, centered on wanting to like be holistic. I think it's important that you have the proper mindset and the proper, routine to have a functioning, balanced life as well as a career. Some people are like, I feel good about my life. I just want to focus on my career. And there's, Andrea says coaching versus mentoring is a really good point, right? There are some people who are great mentors. And my goal really as a Broadway life coach is to help you balance the two things. I love marketing. I love social media. That's, I do have a lot of clients who just want that kind of support, but my big goal is to help people get into the theater community. Doesn't have to be Broadway. It doesn't have to be New York. It can be where you are. And so I think that one of the best things to do is if you're looking for a coach, depending on what you want to improve on, what you want to work on, find somebody who's already in the game, who's doing it, who's working at a high level. I always say train up. Don't just train with people that make you feel safe. Train with the people who are working at the level you want to work at. Train with people who are working in the places you want to work at. Become part of, like, that's what's so great about theater is it's a community. So become part of that community by immersing yourself with the people who can teach you the skills that you need to thrive.
Mhm. Absolutely. And I appreciate so much on your website, people can book a free session with you to see if you're a good fit or not. And I think that too is important before you jump in. It's like hiring a personal trainer or anything else. Andrea said, train up. I love that. So, but people can go on your website and you take clients from anywhere, right? Not just New York based actors.
That's right.
Okay, good. So, and at the end of this, I will put a link to Brett's page on the bottom of the screen so you can find him, but it's pretty easy, bretshuford.com.
And yeah, and there's a lot of great and I think we're going to talk about this, but I also do a lot of free stuff. So like if you're like, I don't really want a private coach, but there's the Actor Mindset Reset, which Andrea and I just put together from Coloring Broadway, is a 14-day mindset video series that you can watch for free, and you get coloring pages with it as well.
And y'all know, if you follow RD on stage, you know we love coloring here at RDU on stage. And we are hosting a community coloring night on Friday. So you can download your pages and color with us Friday night from Coloring Broadway. I want to talk about the Actors Mindset Reset, because I did see that, and kind of what was the impetus? Again, I think that one thing that differentiates the services you're offering is you do approach it from a more holistic place. You are a certified life coach, which I think is important if people are looking for kind of that life coaching aspect of it. What was the impetus for coming up with the Actors Mindset Reset?
It just every person that I work with, especially this year, we would end up covering these same kind of 14 different lessons of I was noticing myself repeating these things over and over again. And I said, what if I could just give people this as a foundation, just so that, because it seems to be a recurring theme. And so it's an easy way to just like get people thinking differently and approaching this differently. I mean, we are all told, and before we even get in start theater, we're told what to expect and how hard it's going to be, and the struggle, and all this stuff, and usually from people who've never even pursued it. Right? So how do you get into the right mindset? And it takes training. I always say, like, if you don't train your brain, it's going to train itself. It's a computer. So you have to repeatedly, ingrain new ideas if you want to get yourself into a new place.
Absolutely, 100%. And I think there are a lot of people who are so scared to follow their dreams or follow their ambitions because they are in their head and they've been told no by people who aren't even in the industry. So, you've done a little bit of everything in your career. You've done television, theater, which we talked about, and you've done some movies. You were in The Wolf of Wall Street. Do you have a favorite medium?
I really want to do more film work. I love doing film work. It is just, I miss it. My resume is so deeply embedded in theater that I don't get to go out for movies as much as I would like to. But I love, like, I've done a couple independent films, and there's just something more, with TV, there's a time crunch. They got to get the episodes out. And so there's a quick, like, we got to get this done so we can move on to the next scene because we got to get this episode edited and done. with movies, like you show up and they're like, the director's like, let's try it this way, or "Ooh, we could change the angle and shoot it this way." There's just such a playful, fun experience when you're on set. Yeah, I think I like, at this stage in my life, I like movies.
Okay, I like that. And I think what's really interesting about right now is so many theater people have had to do the proverbial pivot and become filmmakers because a lot of people are filming their productions. We have a local company right now. They've stopped even calling them theatrical productions. They're calling them films because they're shot on location and more than one location most times. Do you
Wow.
think that the people who have experience in film are better able to handle this new world of theater we're experiencing?
I don't know if they're better. I just think I think that we're all struck. Like, it's just, there's not that much. I think that the TV film people will come back to work sooner because it's easier to control that environment. But the people I know who were already like contracted for TV and film before the shutdown are already back to work, which is great. Um, but there's not as much new stuff happening.
Yeah.
So it's just going to be a slow climb for everybody. I don't know if they have it better or worse. I think we're all kind of in the same boat. But what I do love is seeing people get really, like I said, resourceful and thinking outside the box and trying new ways of approaching. It's pretty cool.
I do too. Any dream roles, movie dream roles, television dream roles? Are we going to see you on Zoe's Extraordinary Playlist? That would be fun.
Oh my God, that would be so fun. That would be so
I
fun.
love that show. So, any dream roles?
Uh, I want to create something new. I think my dream is to create something where people are like, oh, that's that role that Brett Shuford created. And I want to
Any
do that.
desire to direct or write?
Yeah, I love directing.
Okay.
I got to direct last year. I directed a production of Little Mermaid in Connecticut. I
Mhm.
loved it, and I've produced and created, like, content on my YouTube and video content. I love uh, taking an idea and seeing it manifest itself in some form. But I would love to do more directing for sure when we all come back.
I'd love to see that. Okay, Eric Woodall, if you're watching, note to self, Brett would like to direct. So Brett, Eric's got a good season coming up next
Yeah,
year.
please, Eric.
So
I'll hit him up.
um, knowing what you know now, what advice would you give the 5-year-old kid in Texas watching the gingerbread company perform at the library?
Oh my gosh, you did such good research. Uh, I would just say, you know, it's all gonna happen. Don't rush it.
Hmm.
It's all gonna happen. There's no reason to doubt or stress or be afraid. Just trust.
Mhm. I've heard that from other actors too, and they're some of the most grounded actors that I've interviewed. So I love that you shared that. I love that. All right, so I want to tell people that they can follow you on social media. They should follow you on social media because, as Andrea said, your TikTok is on point. Your reels, if you're on Instagram, you can follow Brett on Instagram. And of course, you can visit his website and find out about Broadway Life Apparel, Broadway Husbands podcast, and coaching. And you can download the 14-day actors mindset reset with Coloring Broadway, which I love. So thank you for that. And thank you for hanging out with me tonight. I'm glad we finally made it happen.
Me
Three
too,
times a charm. I
Lauren.
think we've tried to do this 3 times now, but finally made it happen. So I love that. For those of you watching, we have a great week on our Debut on Stage this week. We have tomorrow night Theater on Racist Negativity. So Juan Isler will be hosting Torn. Those are always really dynamic conversations. So please tune in for that. And then Friday, we have 2 events. At 4 p.m., I will be interviewing Vivian Benish and Marin Hinkle. Marin is from The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, and she'll be doing a staged reading with the gorgeous Deborah Messing and Cameron Manheim on Sunday night of Love, Loss, and What I Wore for Playmakers. So if you haven't gotten your tickets for that yet, please do. And tune in Friday to hear what Marin and Vivian have to say about that show. And then Friday night, we'll be coloring. So Bret, if you feel like coloring, we'll be coloring at 7:30 my time for First Friday. First Friday's gone virtual this month. For a while they were virtual, then they went back in person. This month is another virtual First Friday. So hang out with us and color with Andrea and I from Coloring Broadway, and it'll be a lot of fun. Thank you, Bret. I just stay safe and healthy. I hope to see you on stage. I hope to meet you at Broadway Con or some con somewhere.
Please.
And thank you everyone for watching. If you tuned in late, you can watch this from its entirety the minute we go offline. It'll be on Facebook, Twitch, and YouTube, and it'll be on the website in the next couple of days. So thank you so much. And thanks everyone for tuning in. And I hope to see you all soon. Stay safe and healthy, Bret.
Thank you, Lauren. You too.